Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Frankie Boyle!
Welcome to the referendum autopsy. After months of campaigning and conflict, we finally know the answer to whether Scotland wants to be a free and independent country, and that answer is no. Now, a polarising referendum is a tricky thing to cover, but at least the BBC are proving they're open to a full and frank debate by showing this programme after the election on iPlayer only. Not that the BBC is incapable of presenting Scotland accurately. Doctor Who is Scottish, and it's difficult to think of a more archetypal Scottish character. An old man armed with a screwdriver dragging young women into a phone box. They call me the Doctor. I'm taking you back to the 1970s. I think that what Scotland needs to do now is put England on the back foot, do something that the English won't expect, and the last thing that they expect is for us to become an Islamic caliphate. Ah yes, independent Scotland. Of course, we'll need to learn how to treat women slightly better, but we can change. If you feel offended by anything in the show, feel free to tweet your outrage on a mobile phone made by a 10-year-old in China. David Cameron kicked things off by saying Scotland's silent majority must step forward. I've never met a silent Scottish person in my life. In fact, the only time I've ever seen a Scottish guy go silent is when he's just been told the price of a pint by a London barman. I think if with currency, it should have been called legal tender, you prick. Quite a few bizarre celebrities got involved. June Sarpong spoke up for the No campaign, because I often ask myself, what would June Sarpong do in any political quandary? June Sarpong is the name that people at Google type in to check if it's working. Then on the day of the vote, Andy Murray came out in favour of yes. Andy Murray is worth £100 million. If I was worth £100 million, I would never play tennis again. I'd turn up to my next match dressed as a pirate, roll my cock out on the baseline and make Hawkeye take a picture. At least Scotland can now get back to doing what it does best. If only we could work out what that is. All we know is it's not football or parenting. Say what you like about Alex Salmond, they showed us all what an independent future might look like, and also what a frog's cum face might look like. Now, you're probably wondering what this show will be like. Well, I'll be speaking about the referendum with some guests for some of it. Then I'll say some things that I believe in. People will come on to disagree, we'll kick it around a bit, and eventually the audience will vote on whether I'm right or wrong. Before you know it, the show will be over. 10 years will go by. You'll get married, have kids. The kids will grow up and leave. You'll be happy. But will any of it be real? How do you know that any of it is really happening? One night you'll plunge your hand into a fire just so you can feel something and draw back a blackened, burning stump. As you die screaming on your own kitchen floor, you will look into the eyes of God, who will scream obscenities at you in Arabic. God will crumple you up and throw you into an eternal fiery hell, as you or I would throw a wanked-on sock into a neighbour's garden. But that's all for later. For now, let's get on with the show. Now, because many people consider me a cunt, the BBC... Don't clap! The BBC have decided that I can't be trusted on my own and have insisted I'm joined by a couple of guests to make sure I don't go too far. Arguing against me tonight, please welcome Sarah Pascoe and Catherine Ryan. Welcome, thanks for coming. Have you been following the referendum?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Enjoy it?
It was entertaining. I know it wasn't just for entertainment purposes, but it was quite serious.
I suppose if it's not your life been ruined... Probably quite a few laughs to be had.
I would have been sad. I would have been really sad if Scotland had gone, but if I was Scottish, that wouldn't necessarily have been the way I'd have voted.
But would you have been quite sad, sort of in the way that if people had told you they weren't making Starburst anymore?
Are they not making Starburst anymore?
No, they're still making Starburst.
They brought me here to tell me.
Well, weird way to break it. What happened in the Quebec referendum? It was quite a similar thing, wasn't it? It looked like the Yes campaign took a lead and then it all just fizzled out.
Well, Canadians went about it in a very different way. The Yes vote was far ahead, and we had a PM at the time, Jean Chrétien. Nobody liked him. He was as unpopular in Quebec as David Cameron is in Glasgow. And we didn't send politicians to Quebec. We lowered airfares. So, I mean, it wasn't me, but someone lowered airfares. And Canadians themselves did this pilgrimage right before the referendum. And the people really said, like, we appreciate your Francophone culture and we want you to stay. And it was more of a thing of the people, and they did stay.
Has anyone ever made a film of that? Because if they cast that with dogs, it would be amazing. You know, like sometimes they have those adventure films where dogs travel over mountains. We're like that, but with also politics.
I think most films would be better with dogs.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway. We asked you in a kind of spirit of show and tell to bring in your favourite moment from the referendum.
Yes.
What did you choose?
I've picked an amazing YouTube clip and I would actually just title it "The Most Persistent Heckler in the World." This is about 5 days before the vote. So it's all the Labour MPs arriving in Glasgow with their luggage. And can we watch it?
Yes.
Our Imperial Masters have arrived. Welcome, our Imperial Masters. Welcome to Scotland. This is your Imperial Masters. The Labour Party have come so you can bow down before them. Bow down, everybody!
What I love about it, I keep watching it, it's had about 500,000 views and most of them are me, but what I really love is the idea that he probably does this every day, just around the street, and he just turned a corner and the timing was perfect, and suddenly he stopped being a lunatic and became this amazing satirist.
Normally he's just following his ex-girlfriend and creating some real social problems.
I don't think he's ever had a girlfriend.
That would have been a nightmare train to be on, that Labour train. That would have been the busiest first class to Scotland ever. Normally it's just me and Duncan Bannatyne. Catherine, did you bring anything in?
Yes, I really enjoyed Alex Salmond, and there were some interesting press shots taken of this gentleman throughout the campaign. I think we should take a look at some of them.
Okay. I'm not sure what tree that is. I think it's a yew tree. He's quite unself-conscious. David Cameron wouldn't give you a bite of his Solero.
Well, if he did, he wouldn't have his jacket just slung over his shoulder in a jaunty pose.
I don't think anyone would.
Next, here is Alex Salmond just embracing. You know, he's a man of the ladies.
It's a firm grasp he's got on her as well. She might fertilise his fish eggs.
Don't worry. I'd say that if David Cameron looks like the kind of man who'd strangle women, Alex Salmond looks like the guy he'd hire to bury them after.
Next one?
Yeah.
That's made my cock retreat so far into my body, I need to tie a string around it and pull it out like a wobbly tooth. Now, it's not just Catherine and Sarah I have to argue with tonight. I have an entire room full of people to bitterly disagree with. My studio audience. Tonight, they have all the power, as at the end of each debate, they'll be deciding whether I'm right or wrong in a formatting decision I may well end up regretting. Now, on to the show. Tonight, I'll be making 3 propositions. First up, the No campaign relied heavily on the use of fear to convince people to vote no, which brings me to this proposition. The mainstream media are a bunch of lying bastards. The scare stories seem to have worked. The No campaign managed to make people afraid of uncertainty, an incredible achievement in Scotland when you're dealing with people who wake up every second Saturday uncertain of where they are and their HIV status. But the basic proposition here is this. The press and the big TV channels threw everything at this, abandoned any pretence of impartiality, and it worked. Much of the campaign focused on negativity and fear. Do you think I'm being unfair to the media?
I think lying is a very strong word in terms of the media. I think sometimes we can be a bit adolescent in our approach to things, guys. Also, the media itself, by calling it one thing, it's like saying the man. You're trying to fight something that's cohesive when it's not. It's lots of individuals who have different agendas. I don't think there are people who sit down and intentionally... I think people try to entertain, they try to sell papers, but I don't think they intentionally go, oh, I'm going to mislead people. I think if you ask journalists, they would say it would be unethical if we didn't warn people the effects of what could happen.
They don't want to make it easy for you, the media. It's like a puzzle. They'll give you little clues, and you've got to do some of the work. Like when they say, Emma Watson, hot ass in nude photos. What they're really saying is, oh, she's given a UN speech about gender equality. When they say, oh, girl goes missing. What they're really saying is, white girl goes missing.
Yeah. Well, some people saw the media's true priorities when channels like Sky News, that had led with a story about someone getting hit with an egg, laughed off a near riot in George Square.
And Mark White is in George Square in Glasgow, where a pro-union crowd has gathered, and let's say there's been a little ballot box leftovers going on there, which the police are having to handle. Tell us more, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part it's been fairly good-humoured. It's certainly been boisterous, and there's been a lot of singing and a lot of chanting. Fuck it, ain't it, and as you can hear, there's still one or two people in fine voice, regardless of the...
Well, there you go. Anyway.
Well, there you go. That's what his face said. Occasionally people will scream fucker in the pussy in your ear. I think that guy didn't even get off his phone, yeah? No, not you, Dad. Not you. Of course, a big factor in the campaign was the use of social media. The Yes campaign dominated Twitter, but the problem is there's so much noise on there, it's hard to take anything constructive out of it.
No matter what you say about the referendum, you'll get abuse.
You just couldn't say anything.
That's how you can tell how sensitive an important issue is, by how many times somebody calls you a fat lesbian whore.
Yeah, I got a few of those.
Yeah.
It shows you how mainstream people are as well, because J.K. Rowling was a massive voice. Oh, J.K. Rowling thinks this. You know, it's almost as if being a billionaire and feeling that the status quo is pretty good go hand in hand. Oh, so I see you're all eating from food banks. Well, personally, I'm sitting on top of a mountain of children's pocket money, like a dragon in a fucking fairy story. And everything looks fine from up here. Maybe you could teach your children to quack in the street on the off chance that blind people will throw them bread. The press, in particular, embraced the use of fear to scare Scots into voting no. During the campaign, the papers featured some fairly sensational headlines. Let's have a look. Banks will leave Scotland if the independence vote is yes. This is Royal Bank of Scotland, who are bailed out to the tune of billions of pounds and still chain disposable pens to the fucking desk. And they aren't even really a bank, because a bank is something that keeps money. They're not a bank. My kid got a tenner from his granny at Christmas, he's still got it. He's a better bank than the Royal Bank of Scotland. Statistically, my couch is a better bank. Scottish face losing multi-million-pound artworks. Send those back to England. Did this Turner originally have a giant Tipex cock on it? Yes! And why independence could put Scotland in danger of Russian invasion. From Business Insider. Not even a totally mad newspaper, like a proper magazine.
It does make you worry they do know something.
I wonder what the game of Risk must be like in Russia. Where, yes, get Scotland, that's vital. Once you get Scotland, then you can get Greenland, then you control the world's ice supply. You control the penguins, you control everything. It's so obvious that these headlines are made up and created to scare us. Why do we let newspapers get away with it? To discuss that, please welcome the former editor of The Scotsman and current Professor of Journalism at the University of Kent, Tim Luckhurst. Thanks for coming on, Tim. Do you think there were scare stories or bias?
Newspapers are supposed to be biased, Frankie. That's what they're for. Newspapers express opinions. If you want straight facts, you get them from broadcasters. In this country, we have a simple separation between newspapers which are partisan, angry, political, and they support a political stance, and they have readers who know they support that stance. And then we have broadcasters that are there to tell a straight, objective, impartial story. And I think the referendum reflected that perfectly. The newspapers were angry, and they were biased, and they were polemical, and the broadcasters told the truth. We're very lucky we get both.
OK, well, we had in Scotland 45% of people voting yes, and they had one paper that represented them, which was the Sunday Herald, which isn't even owned by a Scottish company. So the majority of the Scottish media didn't represent 45% of the population, would be an obvious point.
Actually, your argument's wrong. Yes, the Sunday Herald was pro-independence, but The Guardian, which is widely influential and more read by broadcasters and more likely to set the news agenda in Scotland than any other paper, sadly even more than The Scotsman that I used to edit. The simple truth is that The Guardian advanced the argument that independence was the progressive solution for Scotland.
Well, what I'd say to you there, Tim, if you're saying I'm wrong, is that The Guardian isn't a Scottish paper and it's said to vote no. So that seems a strange argument to me.
Its final leader said to vote no, but its correspondents and columnists made a very passionate argument.
It allowed some columnists to say yes. And
it didn't allow them to, it encouraged them to.
The media isn't all one thing. Admittedly, it's not all one thing and they've all got slightly different agendas, but overall it's a very similar agenda.
And there's another point here, and it's crucially important. Throughout this campaign in which you're claiming that biased newspapers persuaded Scots not to vote for independence, actually support for independence grew. And I think that's for a crucial reason. It's because newspapers don't create public opinion, they follow it. And the newspapers in Scotland supported no because they thought the majority of the population supported no. And if you want to see an example of how newspapers...
Tim, 45% of them didn't support no and they weren't reflected in almost any way. They got the Sunday Herald, that was all they got.
They got a lot of online campaigning.
We know that there's online people can be different. The reason that online campaigning is different is because it's not owned by different bits. It's not owned by Rupert Murdoch, it's not owned by Trinity Mirror, it's owned by the people themselves who own the Twitter sites, the Facebook sites or whatever. So it's a question of plurality, isn't it?
Well, we have plurality of the media in this country, and we have laws which require there to be plurality of mainstream newspaper ownership and broadcast ownership. And I repeat...
They're not very good laws because Rupert Murdoch owns half of it.
Well, he doesn't own half of it, and it would
he owns far too much of it.
It's an absolute nonsense to suggest that they're all owned by a few big, expensive external foreign owners.
You're trying to suggest this as if I'm giving some kind of outrageous left-field opinion. You know it's a perfectly mainstream opinion. You know it's a perfectly mainstream opinion.
And you should know that headlines are like punchlines. They're meant to entertain.
I've got one more headline from the campaign we showed to you. Can we just have a wee look at it and ask ourselves how they reached this shocking conclusion? Golo in Scotland faces threat from space. I was going to say not from a crazy newspaper, but it is from the Scottish Daily Mail.
Would you explain it to you?
I know what the headline is. The headline is actually about cyber attacks on Scotland, which are as unlikely as alien invasion, I would have argued.
No, the cyber attacks on the security infrastructure of the United Kingdom happen all the time. Many of them run by the People's Republic of China. And the point...
Yeah, I can see why China would want to take down an independent Scotland's computer network.
No, that wasn't the point.
What's their password? English or cunts one? There we go, got it.
That's it. You'd be a great headline writer. You'd be a brilliant headline writer. because you understand the point. The headline's to make you read the rest of the story. As an expert in brilliant sensation, you ought to understand the value of a decent headline. And I'm not going to explain the value of a headline to a man who writes such great punchlines. I'm really not.
Tim, yeah, OK, you're on shaky ground there. Tim, thanks for joining us and giving us the journalist's point of view. Thank you, Tim.
Pleasure.
I'm in no way convinced that the papers are to be trusted, but it's down to my studio audience to see if they agree with me or not. I don't want to influence the vote, but the death rate among studio audiences who disagree with me is surprisingly high. If you agree with me that the mainstream press can't be trusted, it's green. If you think you can believe them, it's red. Please vote now. And it is quite clearly about as green as could be. So there we have it. Our audience realise I'm right and the mainstream media are lying bastards. Now, one of the most remarkable aspects of the Scottish referendum is the way that young people engage with the debate about their future and the fact that for the first time the voting age was lowered to 16. Well, my next proposition is this. As soon as you can make a mark with a crane, you know as much as the average voter, so the voting age should be lowered to 2. I know a lot of people think that that's a ridiculous suggestion because a lot of Scottish 2-year-olds are too drunk to vote. But by the time you've reached my age in life, you're honestly spent, your life force is spent. I am 42 and I now ejaculate with all the force of Mary Berry's icing paper. Let young people have a go at it. It'll work out. What do you think?
I think you're being very silly.
You talk to me like a 2-year-old.
Yeah, because this is the thing. So, you know, like in terms of the development of consciousness, so they say the difference between an animal, a mammal, and a human baby is that if an 18-month-old baby's in a room and you roll a ball in, they look to where the ball is going. This is what pets do, cats and dogs. But at about 2 years old, the baby starts to look for where the ball came from. So why aren't we letting cats vote?
I think that's not the worst idea, right? I think statistically,
they've got a very different agenda.
Cats are going to break into 50-50, right? Also, 2-year-olds will probably be 50-50. Then when kids are sort of 7 to 12, they'll do what their parents tell them. When kids are 12 to 18, they'll do the opposite of what their parents tell them. That'll break down 50-50. Statistically, we might as well have everything vote. Hawks, deer.
But if it's all 50-50, then why have a vote?
Why not?
What, just get rid of elections. Have a dictator.
Do you think how much fun it would be making a hawk vote? We've got 2 million unemployed in Britain. And how many hawks?
Oh, so you're willing to eat the unemployed?
No.
What
The unemployed will work on hawk voting systems. If we were to lower the voting age to 2, it would mean politicians would have to bond with voters at an even younger age, which means we could end up with more terrible moments like this from Michael Gove.
You've recently said that you quite like rap music, so I was wondering, could you give us a taster of your favourite rap?
Well, I've got so many, but the first rap I probably heard when I was younger was actually quite a vanilla rap, which was the Wham rap, you know, with Andrew Ridgeley and George Michael. Hey, everybody, take a look at me. I've got street credibility. I may not have a job, but I have a good time with the boys I meet down on the line.
I think the weird thing there is that he'll have asked her to ask him that. That'll be set up. Yeah. It's like the sort of thing I would do to my mum as a kid. Ask me to do a rap. No. Ask me to do a rap, and then I'd have done the Wham rap completely unaware of its homosexual subtext. Can politicians ever be cool, or ever just not quite painful?
I think Tony Benn was really cool.
He was cool, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We had a politician in Toronto on a different level of cool, smoked crack. Similar.
But those guys smoke crack.
Do you know, smoking crack is one of the least offensive things Rob Ford has ever done. Hates gays, hates women, hates immigrants. A general asshole.
Does he chill out when he's high, though?
No, it hypes him up, and he goes out on drug runs. But he's so large. How can he be that fat on crack? He's terrible at doing crack.
I think a 2-year-old is definitely as capable of critical thought as this group of eloquent Rangers fans.
Can I ask you something? Stick your independence up your ass. You can stick your independence up your ass. You can stick your independence, stick your independence up your ass. Rule Britannia, you fucking bastards. Rule fucking Britannia. You rule the fucking way.
Camden. Hey.
We are the people.
It'll happen then.
We are the people.
That version of Rule Britannia is why Last Night of the Proms never comes from Scotland. And now, with a performance of Rule Britannia, you fucking bastard. There was a lot of support for no, actually, on both sides of the old firm divide, because SNP brought in an anti-sectarian law. So there's people going, he took away our right to mutual hatred. Stand with me, brother! He actually bonded over that. Now, we're here discussing whether kids should be allowed to vote or not, so why don't we meet one? Please welcome an 8-year-old and wee guy, Leon. Take them off now, Leon. How you doing, man?
Fine.
You're 8. You're an 8-year-old Scottish boy. What did you think of the referendum? What would you say happened last week, in your own words?
Well, there was a lot of fighting.
Did you get involved in any of it? Oh, good, didn't it? So the yes vote lost. People decided to stay part of Britain. Were you happy about that? No? That's heartbreaking.
This is the saddest I've been.
Were you always yes, or did you start at no? Or?
Well, I started no, and then I changed to yes.
Cool. What made you change your mind?
Well, when I heard you were yes.
Did you find the referendum more or less boring than school?
Less boring than school.
It's less boring than school, isn't it? Everything is. Do you get punished at school? Are you a bad kid or a good kid?
Bad.
That's why you cared about my opinion. Do you know what I mean? You have this thing as a dad, right? Because I've got kids where you're supposed to stay positive with your kids when you tell them off. Don't be too negative, you know, try and keep it light. But sometimes I'm just standing there thinking, I don't see anything positive about this. You have done a poo on my carpet. And I am struggling to find an upside. Do you know how I punish my son? I tuck his bedclothes in really tight and hope that he has a nightmare where he's trapped in a giant's pocket. What do your parents do if you're bad then?
Pull my ear.
Pull your ear? What? Stay here, Leon. You're going home with me. What are you into? What kind of stuff do you like?
Football.
Football? Who do you support?
Arsenal.
Arsenal? This is how we've been colonised. Do you have a Scottish team, a wee team?
Celtic.
Celtic. Celtic's his wee team. You've effectively managed to insult everybody in Glasgow. And what do you think the future holds for us? Do you think it's going to be good? Do you think it's going to be bad?
In the middle, probably.
Yeah, it probably will be in the middle. What's your favourite thing about being Scottish?
Shortbread.
Shortbread? Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Leon. Cheers. Audience, you've heard the arguments. It's time for you to decide if I'm right or wrong. It's green for yes and red for no. Should a 2-year-old be given the right to vote?
No.
So that is a no, a very firm no, by a bunch of childless bastards. Now it's time to talk to the audience. I hate talking to people that I don't know, almost as much as I hate talking to people that I do know. To me, there's no such thing as a stranger, just a prick I haven't met yet. Before the show, we asked everyone in our audience to fill out a questionnaire to learn more about their opinions on the referendum, Scotland, what makes them tick, all that stuff. Where's Marie Hamill? How you doing, Marie?
I'm okay, how are you?
I'm very good, actually. But I'm kind of busy working here. We asked you which celebrity would make the best Prime Minister, and you said Stephen Fry.
Yeah, I know it's a bit cliche, but he just seems really well informed and quite balanced as well. Plus, he'd do a lot for the gay community.
He doesn't seem well balanced. He's bipolar.
When he's on his neck.
You would have a depressed Prime Minister on a ferry to Belgium with the nuclear codes. You said the worst thing about being Scottish was that we're overly hospitable. Fuck off. Mate, a pleasure to meet you. Where is Gordon Houston? Are you, Gordon? How you doing, mate?
Hello.
All right. We asked you, which celebrity would you like to be stranded on a desert island with?
You did.
I did?
You did ask me that.
Yes, OK. Have you heard of rhetorical questions, Gordon? Don't answer that. You said you'd like to be stranded on a desert island with the Dalai Lama. Now, he is the last person I would want to fuck. But you're thinking there, do you think if you killed him often enough he might come back as a roast dinner, or...?
I think it was more a tantric thing maybe going on.
Tantric?
Yeah, I heard he can last.
What, are you genuinely gay for the Dalai Lama? Oh, you get all sorts in Scotland, don't you? It's just... Once you float down to iPlayer, you really start to meet people, don't you? Thank you, Gordon. We also have tattooist Andrew Burns. Andrew, where are you? How you doing, Andrew? I knew it was you from your tattoos.
Yeah, can you tell?
Again, I'm faking it. How you doing, man?
All right.
I hear you offered a special offer on Yes Tattoos.
Yeah, I offered free Yes tattoos on, like, for a whole day.
Right. You offering free tattoo removal?
No. we do tattoo removal, but you need to pay for that.
Yeah, I see how your business works. We asked you, what do you think is Scotland's greatest achievement? And you said, Grand Theft Auto. Prostitute murders, robbery, drug dealing. Where does that Dundee-based games company get its ideas? We simply don't know. Thank you to my audience. It's been a long 2 years reaching last week's verdict, and it's been a divisive and emotional campaign. But at least we can all agree on something. My next proposition. Scotland and England's relationship is a pitiless abyss of hatred and despair. We don't need English culture. Scotland has its own culture. England is Glastonbury. We have tea in the park, where people get Glastonburied all the time. Ed Miliband threatened to station guards at the border. A militarised border. Newcastle could have become a refugee camp for English people trying to escape. And Newcastle would be the first place to become a refugee camp and get less mental. Oh, things are a lot more civilised now that we're ruled over by a horse militia. Do you feel Scottish and English people hate each other?
I've been very surprised doing gigs, because obviously you open, especially the whole kind of week leading up to referendum, you open by going, oh, so this has been going on in Scotland. And just the 4 days before the vote, English audiences suddenly got really angry. Suddenly just like, well, F them then, let them go, see what happens, yeah, see if I care. It was like their feelings were so hurt, because so many people just feel British.
I think that we have more in common than you think, because the Scottish hate the English hate themselves, and everybody hates you too. And if we could just find those things and bond over them, I mean, I don't believe, I'm Canadian, but I'm a British mom, and I think it's really important that my daughter grows up with Scottish influences, Irish influences, you know, Wales to a lesser extent.
Well, this broken relationship continued when the referendum coverage featured the most baffled Englishmen reporting on a Scotland they couldn't hope to understand. Channel 4 went for Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Oh, but we'll just be a new country. We'll be the main country now. We'll be able to run.
I voted. No, I voted. You helped me. I just wanted to.
I just wanted to be part of the UK. I think we've been at like this for a time.
Well, we would miss you if you went.
What's the big difference between? What is the difference between this independence?
What is it? Country and be able to run it and that.
What is it? What is independence and what is that? I don't even get
because we're part of the UK. There's Wales, Scotland and England.
Well, we are UK. Money
and the currency of the change of currency if you got independent.
What will money change to?
Oh, I don't know. That'll have to be decided after.
Oh, no, I'm not so independence, you don't want that to happen.
No, I don't.
Today I met two of the Scottish natives. They were drinking a clear liquid of which I partook. The next 48 hours are a blur of bestial imagery and invented language. I awoke in the doorway of HSBC wearing somebody else's trousers. On my return, I shall present my findings to the Royal Society. Well, like many relationships on the rocks, it was only when one half threatened to walk out the door that the other began to take it seriously. Westminster spent most of the campaign in denial, but when things got serious, the reaction was one of panic. Here's a cringeworthy attempt by David Cameron to bond with the Scots.
David Cameron spoke to workers in Edinburgh's financial district in a way he's never spoken before.
I think people can feel it's a bit like a general election, that you make a decision and 5 years later you can make another decision. If you're fed up with the effing Tories, give them a kick and then maybe we'll think again. This is totally different to a general election.
What gets me about that is he's clearly workshopped that with the guys at the office. Shall I say effing? Oh yeah, that'll get. Oh yeah, we'll say effing. Yeah, you all want to give the effing Tories a kicking. I know that. I understand you people. You'd like to give me an effing kicking. Tear me a new A and S in my mouth. You'd like to tear off my bee bag and feed it to an Alsatian. I know, I get it. You'd like to tie some cheese wire around my D, tie it to the back of a taxi and floor it. Do you think Cameron came out of it at all well? He sort of came out of it better than Miliband.
In a way, maybe it did work, because here, it was an awful speech, and it's very uncomfortable to see him use language that he's not comfortable in his mouth. But you did watch it thinking, OK, yeah, let's stay unified and get rid of this government together. Like, some people maybe did think that.
And replace it with what Ed Miliband, a kind of adenoidal manta ray. A kind of dog toy. Now, time for the audience to vote. Do you agree with me that Scotland and England's relationship is a pitiless abyss of hatred and despair? Green for yes, red for no. It's almost entirely green, but then I'm biased. It's, it's largely green. A yes vote there. Scottish people agree with me, as do a few English people who just didn't understand what the fuck I was saying. Well, that's the end of our referendum autopsy. Thanks to my guests, Catherine Ryan and Sarah Pascoe. But before I go, I want to leave you with this thought. A little final thought in the style of Jerry Springer or He-Man. I don't know if you remember that. Of course, the only way that we can tell if this show has truly been a success or not is to wait and see whether I'm silenced by the security services. That's the only way you know you've really hit the nail on the head as a comedian. You're silenced by the security services. So if I'm found hanged on the back of a hotel door with an orange in my mouth, at least you'll know the security services didn't get to me. What'll happen is that one day I'll go out like Robin Cook or Dr. David Kelly. I'll go to meet a friend for a walk in the countryside. But when I get to the top of the hill, it won't be my friend waiting for me. It'll be a sergeant major, formerly of the Special Boat Squadron. We'll both know that my time is up. I'll ask him for a final cigarette, and he'll bring out two, one for me and one for him. I'll ask him if I can have a final wank as well. And he'll explain that my DNA would go everywhere and contaminate the scene. So he'll have brought a roll of lino for me to wank onto. I'll be wanking onto the lino and I'll ask him to stop looking at me. And he'll tell me that it's okay, he can't see me. All he can see is his mate upside down and burning in a Land Rover. That's all he ever sees, even when he closes his eyes. He'll ask me to hurry up because he has to go and silence Russell Brand in a minute. In the corner of my eye, I'll see him laying out Paul Ross's corpse to make it look like we died in a gay suicide pact. I'll look down on the Scottish glen below me and briefly imagine that the furious pumping of my fist is what powers the turning of the entire world. Then I'll feel a needle in the back of my neck and suddenly I'll be in the bosom of a Buddha who despises me. The chances of this show being made into a series are 6 to 1 against. Thanks for coming and good night.